He suggested his attorney lie to the FBI and the grand jury by saying that he does not have the documents that they requested in the subpoena. He asks Walt Nauta to move boxes of documents to conceal them from Trump's attorney and as well as the FBI and the grand jury. He provides to the FBI and the grand jury just some of the documents while saying that he was cooperating fully, but in fact he was not.
I'm Benjamin Wittes, and this is the Lawfare Podcast, June 13th, 2023. We don't usually cross-post stuff from other podcasts on the Lawfare Podcast, but this weekend I had a conversation on Read With Me that I thought we should share on the Lawfare Podcast. Read With Me is a by-subscription-only podcast associated with my Substack, Dogshirt Daily. We normally keep this material separate from Lawfare, but in this case, I went through the indictment of Donald Trump at great length and with particular care with Lawfare Fulton County Court Correspondent Anna Bauer and Lawfare contributing editor Matt Tait. It's a line-by-line, page-by-page analysis. It's pretty long, and it's very different from what we usually do on this show, but we thought it might be a good resource for people who are trying to make sense of the indictment, where it's strong, where it raises issues, what issues it raises, and where things might go from here. It's the Lawfare Podcast, June 13th. Read With Me, the Trump indictment. Today's document is the indictment in U.S. District Court for the Southern District of Florida, docket number 23CR 8101, United States v. Donald J. Trump and Waltine Nauta. I do not know how to pronounce his last name, and honestly, I'm not sure whether Waltine is supposed to rhyme with saltine or whether it's pronounced some other way. He seems to go by Walt. We are going to be going through this document, a couple of preliminary words about it. It is 49 pages, although some of those are cover pages and checklists and stuff. Some of them are lists of documents, which we'll discuss. And it is, I gotta say, one of the most tightly and elegantly written indictments I have ever read. There is not a unnecessary sentence in it. I was going through it today trying to figure out what could be summarized rather than just read, and the answer is almost nothing. We are just going to start at the beginning and go through. Anna, let's start with the list of statutes right at the top of the indictment. What are the 7 statutes that are listed?
Right. So we've got 18 U.S.C. 793E, which is, I believe, our Espionage Act counts.
Right. That's going to be the one that's doing the lion's share of the work on the number of counts. There's 31 counts of that. And it is the statute that bars the unauthorized intentional retention of, hoarding of, dissemination of, refusal to return information related to the national defense. What's next on our menu?
So next we start moving into some of the obstruction statutes. So we go to 18 U.S.C. 1512K, which is conspiracy to obstruct justice. Then we move on to count 33, which is withholding a document or record, 18 U.S.C. 1512 B2A. And I believe that's the count that includes the abetting as well. And then we have corruptly concealing a document or record in count 34, 18 U.S.C. 1512 C1. Then we have
my favorite of them all, 1519,
Right, 1519, concealing a document in a federal investigation.
I love that statute because it's like it's such a specific thing. They were like, one day somebody concealed a document and they realized they didn't have a statute for it. So they, raced to pass 1519. And then we have 2 false statements counts.
Right. We've got count 37, false statements and representations. And then count 38, false statements and representations as well. 18 USC 1001 A2. I think we might have missed count 36, though, which is scheme to conceal. Oh, it's a different, right. So it's 18 USC 1001 A1.
Right. We have both A1 and A2. And then we have the famous 18 USC 2 statute, which is stuck in there for good measure. 18 USC 2 is this fun little statute that says if you cause an act to be done, which would be a crime if you do it, but you get somebody else to do it, it's a crime anyway. And we'll find that good old 18 USC 2 becomes kind of important as you go through the document, as a bunch of things that Donald Trump doesn't want to do himself, he gets other people to do. So you need 18 USC 2 or some kind of a conspiracy statute to do. Okay, so then we have 2 defendants here. We have Donald J. Trump, former president of the United States, and we have Waltine, aka Walt Nauta or Nauta or Nata. I'm not really sure how it's pronounced, and I don't think he's going to be asking questions right now. Walt Nata, Matt, what do we know about him?
So he's one of the people that was working for Donald Trump at the Mar-a-Lago estate. He's a valet to Donald Trump, and he was involved at Mar-a-Lago with some of the as the indictment alleges, that he was involved in moving some of the documents, cleaning some of them up, and as we'll see a little bit later, texting various people about things that were going on at Mar-a-Lago, and the movement of some of these documents and what Donald Trump perhaps knew about it.
All right, so paragraph 1 of the indictment begins by noting that Donald Trump was president and notes the dates of that. And then it has a sentence that I think is just designed to set up the stakes here. It's a truism, but it's in some ways a remarkable sentence. It reads, as president, Trump had lawful access to the most sensitive classified documents and national defense information gathered and owned, note the ownership, by the United States government, including information from the agencies that comprise the United States intelligence community and the United States Department of Defense. So I'm curious, I read that as like Jack Smith saying in paragraph 1, I'm not fucking around here. The stakes here are pretty substantial. How did you guys read it?
So I read it actually as saying something quite important, which is that the Espionage Act and the statutes around mishandling classified information do make a distinction, and it is important for sort of the principle of charging these types of crimes to distinguish people that have classified information because they lawfully have access to it versus people that have access to classified information because it was given to them. So to give you a good example, we've had several cases in the past where people that had lawful access to classified information gave that information to journalists, for instance. And the United States has, generally speaking, charged the people that had lawful access through their, employment to, intelligence agencies or the Department of Defense or wherever else. We will charge them because they have lawful access to it and they are disclosing it against the statute of the Espionage Act. But the people that the documents were given to, journalists and so on, are generally not charged with possession of those classified documents. And I think what this sentence is doing is it's doing something quite important, is that it is saying, before we get into the body of the indictment itself, just so that nobody has any doubt, President Donald Trump does not look like a journalist who has received classified documents in this case. He looks like someone who had classified information, was properly, lawfully authorized to have that classified information as part of his duties and part of his job as being president of the United States. And he misused that authority and took these documents. And so the statute applies to him.
Yeah, I read it in a really similar way, Matt. And I think that there's kind of like a setting up the stakes and some of the like thematic elements that run through the indictment of like really just starting out with emphasizing that this was a man who had great responsibility and lawfully had, you know, our nation's secrets. And then kind of what follows after this paragraph really shows how much that responsibility for our nation's secrets was really mishandled in his post-presidency period. So I think there's kind of a storytelling device here as well with setting it up with this first paragraph.
Yeah, so all right, let's go to the second paragraph. Over the course of his presidency, Trump gathered newspapers, press clippings, letters, notes, cards, photographs, official documents, and other materials in cardboard boxes that he kept in the White House. Among the materials Trump stored in his boxes were hundreds of classified documents. I want to start by noting that paragraph is not alleging any criminal activity, much like the previous paragraph. It's kind of a, you know, the president has access to classified material. He stores it, but that is a very irregular way to store classified information. And I think part of what they're doing here is they're saying, you know, classified information is generally segregated. It's generally stored in particular facilities, not in cardboard boxes and, you know, the residential components of the White House. And so while they're not alleging any criminal activity there is something, they're already setting up a certain carelessness and blitheness with the material. What do you guys think?
I think that's right. I also think that, you know, it solves something of a mystery that was kind of unknown, how a lot of the classified materials, you know, became mixed in with some of these other items, and to what extent Trump had, you know, personal knowledge or personal involvement in collecting these materials within the boxes themselves during his time at the White House. So this paragraph kind of solves that mystery a bit in that we now know that Trump himself was, you know, intentionally gathering these, you know, papers into these boxes. And so he presumably had knowledge of what was in there.
Yeah, so that's a really important point. And we're going to see over the course of this document how much careful attention Jack Smith et al. Pay to Trump's personal responsibility for the handling of these documents. And I do think the fact that, you know, the verb to gather here is attributed to him individually is the first part of that assignment of individual responsibility.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think it does a couple of other things as well. Like, as you mentioned, we're still very, very early in the indictment. And what the indictment is doing is it's setting out the sort of the framing devices that are going to be important when we get closer to, you know, actually saying what the charges are. And they're giving you some of the background for you to be able to understand and contextualize what you see a little bit later. So a little bit later in the indictment, we're going to see these boxes. They're going to be, you know, very central to the rest of this indictment. And people are very reasonably going to have the question, well, you know, what are these boxes? What are in these boxes? Who put things in the boxes? And here what we're starting to see is we're seeing the special counsel say these boxes were put together in the White House by Donald Trump personally. And also, what was he doing with these boxes? He was collecting various things, newspapers, press clippings, letters, notes, cards, photographs, and so on. And, all of those things up until we get to official documents are entirely reasonable things for, people to want to, store over the course of their, being president. It's completely normal, completely reasonable for, any president to be, gathering up, memorabilia into boxes that they know they will eventually be taking out. But what we see here in the second half of this paragraph is that they were also putting in official documents.
This brings us to paragraph 3, which is really the stakes paragraph. The classified documents Trump stored in his boxes included information regarding defense and weapons capabilities of both the United States and foreign countries, U.S. nuclear programs, potential vulnerabilities of the United States and its allies to military attack, and plans for possible retaliation in response to a foreign attack. And of course, it goes on to say that the disclosure of this material would implicate the safety of military personnel. And this is a particular issue for, in the national security arena, the human sources and continued viability of intelligence collection methods. Matt, is it fair of me to say this is basically prosecutor speak for the stuff in here is as sensitive as anything the United States has?
Yeah, so it gives different specific categories of classified categories of information, and who would be impacted in the event that information was lost. And that's very important because, of course, the executive order, which lays out how classifications are assigned inside the US government, how you understand that this particular document is confidential, but that particular document is top secret, is based in no small part based on, what the consequences are in the event that document was revealed to, adversaries. And in this particular case, they're making the claim that this would be of catastrophic consequence to the United States, and consequently, these documents are properly very highly classified.
All right, so paragraph 4, then we reach the pivot point. At 12 p.m. on January 20th, 2021, Trump ceased to be president as he departed the White House. And note here that it's not entirely clear whether this happened before or after he departed, which has, I think, implications for certain charging decisions. As he departed the White House, Trump caused scores of boxes. Now, that word caused is a reference to 18 U.S.C. 2. If you do something that's a crime, if you cause something to be done through somebody else's hands, that's a crime. If you do it, it's still a crime, right? So that statute there becomes important. Trump caused scores of boxes, many of which contained classified documents, to be transported to the Mar-a-Lago Club in Palm Beach, Florida, where he maintained his residence. Trump was not authorized to possess or retain those classified documents. Okay, so Anna, I read this paragraph and say, this says clearly that he caused these boxes to be removed, and that cannot be charged in Florida because this is something that happened in Washington, D.C. But if it happened after he was president, this could be charged in Washington in a separate indictment. How do you read that?
I agree. I think, and I do wonder if we might see some separate indictments in DC. And as we'll get to later in the indictment, there's also a potential in New Jersey as well, because of some of the events that happened at his golf club there. So that's how I read it as well, Ben.
Yeah, I think the vitality of this case, the case for charging the removal of these materials depends entirely on whether they were removed before he ceased to be president, or in which case, by the way, he has the authority to have them removed, or after noon. So you would want to know at what time the truck left, or the, helicopter or whatever vehicle these boxes are on. You would want to know what time it left, because I think whether it's a separate offense under the statute really does depend on this. Okay, this is my favorite paragraph in the entire indictment, and there are many candidates for it. Paragraph number 5. I think Jack Smith's people had a lot of fun writing this. The Mar-a-Lago Club was an active social club which between January 2021 and August 2022 hosted events for tens of thousands of members and guests. After Trump's presidency, the Mar-a-Lago Club was not an authorized location for the storage, possession, review, display, or discussion of classified documents. Nevertheless, Trump stored his boxes containing classified documents in various locations in the Mar-a-Lago Club, including in a ballroom, a bathroom and shower, an office space, his bedroom, and a storage room. Now, Matt, you have been responsible for classified information, albeit, British classified information.
Which American classified information too, Ben. But
American classified, yeah, Five Eyes, right? And you get cleared to see stuff sometimes. So, yeah, what is the normal? Give us they're being a little bit, I think, playful here. They're describing the manner of holding material at Mar-a-Lago, and the assumption is that educated people know something about or they're going to present in court, what the normal rules for the storage of classified information look like. What do they look like? What's a normal facility for this kind of storage? How is it different from a bathroom at Mar-a-Lago?
Well, you're suggesting that perhaps we don't store classified documents in ballrooms and bathrooms and showers, Ben.
I'm thinking not, and having been in a number of secure information facilities, I have an instinct about what the answer to this question is. But I've never seen them stored on a stage in a ballroom.
For sure. So yeah, the storage for different categories of information varies widely depending on what the information is. Unclassified material can be stored pretty generally. As it starts to ratchet up through the ranks to become more heavily classified information, the rules and retention rules of how that has to be stored and accounted for get substantially more aggressive. Documents that are, at a secret level are going to usually be stored within a secure compartmented information facility called a SCIF. And that is designed to exclude people from the building that do not have appropriate clearance to be there. Usually for a SCIF, you will also exclude mobile devices and devices that might be used for recording, for instance. As you start to get up into, top secret documents, you're likely to have additional restrictions requiring that even within the SCIF, that they have to be held within certain spaces that are appropriately cleared for it, and that those documents need to be locked away in appropriate safes that have a limited number of people that have access to that safe, and that the safe itself meets certain requirements in order to make it very difficult to break into those safes. When you have things like nuclear secrets, when you have things like information that's derived from, human sources, for instance, things that are starting to live not just at the top secret level, but within, even a very limited number of people that have top secret clearance would have ordinary access to some of these documents, that those are going to be, have potentially very, very restrictive lists of individual named people that might have access to that document, who might need to sign it in and sign it out. And in the event that the document goes missing, then, everybody, loses their minds and works out where the document is.
The last time I was in the NSA, which is, a facility that is cleared for the most sensitive information, or actually every time I've been in the NSA, I have been struck by the fact that the building basically has no windows. The director's office has a window. There are a couple, here and there. But basically, this is a building that...
It is literally a fort, Ben. It is literally
it is literally a fort, right? This is not a stage with boxes stacked on it where if, you spill the documents or a box, as happened here, somebody would just kind of snap a picture, right?
Yeah, like these documents, especially at once you're into classified documents, they're not going to be around people that do not have security clearances. People without security clearances are not able to just wander into Fort Meade and start taking pictures. And in the event that they tried, they would be denied access immediately at the door.
All right, so we have now reached the end of page 2 of the indictment, 26 minutes into this conversation, which gives you an idea of just how meaty and substantial it is. All right, we now come to what I think is the single most shocking allegation in the document. Again, this is just the summary in the introduction. This isn't even the fleshing out of any of these allegations. At the bottom of page 2, it says, on 2 occasions in 2021, Trump showed classified documents to others as follows. Now, I want to note that this conduct is not specifically charged in the indictment. And the reason is that both of these actions did not take place in the Southern District of Florida. They take place at Bedminster, which is in New Jersey. So it is possible, I think, that these are some of the most outrageous actions in the document. If they are going to be charged for reasons that will become obvious, they will have to be charged in New Jersey. So, Anna, what happens in paragraph 6? We have now moved on to page 3. What are these 2 incidents, both of which are fleshed out in detail in the body of the indictment?
Right. So we have one incident in July of 2021 at the golf club in New Jersey, and this is an audio recorded meeting with 4 individuals, a writer, a publisher, and 2 members of Trump's staff, none of whom had security clearance. And we learned that Trump showed them and described a plan of attack. And he told the individuals that it was highly confidential and secret. He also says, as president, I could have declassified it. Now I can't, but this is still a secret.
So for readers who aren't clear about this is a tape. We learn the details of it later, and we'll discuss the details of it. But this is a tape where the president acknowledges that this document is secret, which means is a term of art. It means classified at the secret level, that he could have declassified it, but he didn't. What is the significance of that if you're not going to charge him with disseminating the classified information?
So this is an absolutely incredible admission. And I think it is something that's probably a non-trivial part of why this entire case has been put together, is that the president is here saying a bunch of things that are really important, right? So number one, Trump is admitting that he knows that this document is secret, right? In the event that the government accuses you of having lawfully held a secret document and then disseminating it, perhaps you might say, well, I didn't know it was secret, right? But here we have Trump admitting that he knows that it is secret. And then the second big question that's been floated around a lot in the past few years, especially with relation to Trump's inability to keep secrets, is this question of whether or not Donald Trump declassified the secrets whilst he was still president. That people could say perhaps Donald Trump declassified it, in some process, perhaps not the ordinary process, but in some other process, perhaps, and therefore is, not guilty of disseminating classified information because he somehow declassified it. And what we have here is we have Donald Trump admitting on tape that he could have declassified it but didn't, right? And that's really, really important because it undermines two very clear, well, I guess actually three very clear things. Number one, Donald Trump knew that this document was secret. Number two, he says that he could have declassified it, but says that he didn't. So he knows that it is still secret at the point where he is revealing it. And thirdly, he also knows that the person that he's revealing it to does not have appropriate security clearance to receive the document, which is devastating to his case.
Yeah, so I was talking to a very senior former prosecutor the other day, or last night, who said, that tape, oh my God, that tape is game over. And that is exactly what he's referring to when he said that. And look, there's another feature of the tape, which is this is a completed crime in the court. This tape contains the dissemination of this classified material, as well as the statement that you know it's classified, and that you that very rare tape that contains the evidence of cognizance of guilt. And so if you're wondering, is there going to be an additional indictment in New Jersey? So in this indictment, the tape is playing the role of showing his state of mind. But if you imagine a case in New Jersey, this tape is the crime. And I think I obviously don't know if there's going to be an indictment in New Jersey. I have no inside information, but this indictment contains evidence of material that would be clearly indictable as a crime, assuming it's true, as a crime if you brought it in New Jersey. Anna.
Right. And just to make it kind of clear how this incident connects to kind of the larger events that are going on in Florida as well, is that, it's not just that in this particular instance, about this particular document, Trump was acknowledging this is secret material and I haven't declassified it. It's that Trump's kind of PR line that he has said again and again is that he declassified all of the documents that he had in his possession, right? And so that would include, the things that are in Florida. But here they have an example of him admitting that there are some documents that he did not declassify. And then it also just kind of shows that he had a more general kind of knowledge about the procedures and the way that, classified information and declassification works. And so I think that kind of is one reason why, even though this incident isn't charged in this indictment, it still goes to, some of the kind of broader things that are at play here in terms of knowledge and that kind of thing.
All right. So then we go to 6B, which has gotten less attention because there's no tape, but it's a kind of, I think this is Jack Smith saying, it wasn't just once, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so this is an example where Trump shows a representative of his political action committee again at his New Jersey club. This person, again, doesn't have security clearance, and Trump shows this person a classified map relating to a military operation. And Trump himself says that he should not be showing it to the representative and that the representative should not get too close to the map.
Okay, so Matt, obviously that first part should not be showing it. It reflects cognizance of guilt. But Trump's lawyers are going to say in response, representatives should not get too close, means showing it at a distance. It's too far away for anybody to see. With highly classified material, are you allowed to show it to people at a distance?
No. In the event that it is properly classified material and the other person does not have a appropriate security clearance to see it and an appropriate need to know for the specified information, then it is not allowed to show it to them in any form whatsoever, at a distance, through like blurring, indirectly, you cannot show that information. But I think this second paragraph also does something, in addition to the first one. The first one is sort of demolishes three very important things. Number one, he knew the document was classified. Number two, he says that he could have declassified it, but he didn't. And third of all, that he was telling it to someone that didn't have the security clearance. This second one, 6B, is also showing that he knew the person he was talking to did not have clearance to see it, right? Perhaps he would come up with a defense in the first instance to say, well, I had no way to know that this random writer in my golf club in Bedminster, New Jersey, wasn't in fact a top secret cleared professional with a need to know. Laughable as that claim is, B demolishes it. He knows when he's talking to people about this classified information that he shouldn't be.
All right. So now we come to paragraph 7, which in this summary, remember, we are still in the summary section of this indictment. We're only on page 3. This is the heart of the criminality that this indictment alleges, which is, all right, so in March of 2002, the FBI opens a criminal investigation into Trump's retention of this material. The following month, the grand jury begins its investigation. It issues a subpoena saying, give us back all the classified marked material. And the document reads, Trump endeavored to obstruct the FBI and grand jury investigations and conceal his continued retention of classified documents by, among other things. So, Anna, give us a summary here of these distinct 5 things that Trump is alleged to have done.
Right. So first we've got that he suggested his attorney lie to the FBI and the grand jury by saying that he does not have the documents that they requested in the subpoena. He asks Walt Nauta. Did we decide that that's how you pronounce it?
We don't know how to pronounce it. So anyway, we can vary it up. You can go with Nauta.
Different one every time.
Different one every time. Naughty Nauta. I don't know. You just make it up.
All right. So Nauta, to move boxes of documents to conceal them from Trump's attorney and as well as the FBI and the grand jury. He asks his attorney to hide or destroy documents called for in the subpoena. He provides to the FBI and the grand jury just some of the documents while saying that he was cooperating fully, but in fact, he was not. And then finally, the fifth one is that he caused a certification by one of his attorneys to be submitted to the FBI, which falsely represented that, they'd done a diligent search and that the documents had been produced when, in fact, Trump knew that that was not true.
And then the final substantive narrative paragraph of this summary describes the consequences of this, which is that a certain number of documents are available basically to anybody who walks into Mar-a-Lago for a protracted period of time, and some of them may not have been recovered. So, Matt, what's this paragraph 8 sense of the consequences here?
Yeah, so this is just enumerating all of the different documents and when they were eventually recovered. So we have in paragraph 8, as a result of Trump's retention of classified documents after his presidency and refusal to return them, hundreds of classified documents were not recovered by the United States government until 2022. Paragraph A, on January 17th, nearly a year after he left office and months after the National Archives and Records Administration, NARA, asked Trump to provide all of the missing presidential records, Trump and his team provided 15 boxes containing 197 documents with classification markings. On June the 3rd, so about 6 months later, in response to a grand jury subpoena demanding the production of all documents with classification markings, Trump's attorney provided the FBI with 38 additional documents, all with classification markings. And on August the 8th, pursuant to a court-authorized search warrant, the FBI recovered from Trump's office and a storage room at the Mar-a-Lago Club 102 further documents, also with classification markings. And a bit later, we'll see what some of those documents are.
Right. So, okay. So now that is essentially the end of the summary. We're now on page 4. Again, that should give you an idea of how dense this document is with important material. And we're now really at the first place in the indictment where you could summarize anything rather than read it without losing something. So, the next, there's a brief section about who Nata is, which is to say Trump's body man. There's a brief section about the nature of the Mar-a-Lago Club, which again emphasizes that it had hundreds of members and was staffed by more than 150 full-time, part-time, and temporary employees. It doesn't say, but implies none of whom have clearances to see classified information.
Yes, certainly the overwhelming majority.
Right. And it hosted in the relevant period 150 social events, including weddings, movie premieres, and fundraisers that drew tens of thousands of guests. The Secret Service was not responsible, though it was responsible for Trump's personal protection. It was not responsible for the protection of Trump's boxes or their contents, nor did he inform them that he was storing boxes containing classified documents at the club. Now, they're going to need to put on a witness to establish this. So you have to imagine a officer of the United States Secret Service responsible for security at Mar-a-Lago describing what he was and was not responsible for, and basically saying we had no idea there were 80 or 100 boxes of classified material. We were not responsible for that. We were responsible for preventing people from, hurting or killing the former president and his family. And I think that testimony is going to be devastating if you imagine that President Trump, they've established that he's individually responsible for squirreling away a lot of highly classified material here.
Yeah, so this paragraph is actually going to be very important because, of course, the members of Donald Trump's protection detail will have themselves each security clearance. And what's going to be very important in the trial is establishing, and this is what this paragraph is basically trying to establish, is that the Secret Service was not delegated by Donald Trump the responsibility for keeping these documents safe. They were not within the Secret Service's on-site SCIF. It was not managed by people that are properly cleared by the United States government. And also it's important because the Secret Service personnel, of course, as a consequence of having a clearance, in the event that they had been aware that there was classified information there, they would have had a duty to report it. As someone that has a clearance, you have a duty to report in the event that you become aware of classified information being mishandled. So it's also separately important to point out that Donald Trump didn't even make them aware of it. And so none of this can be blame shifted out to the Secret Service. This is entirely the responsibility of Donald Trump and the people around him.
Yeah, I think it's not an especially interesting component of the indictment, but I think it will be a powerful component of a trial. Okay, so the next section, which we can very briefly summarize, describes the classification information system, which I will just do here. It's established by executive order. This is the president's information to protect. Material can be classified at the top secret, or confidential level. Loosely speaking, top secret is material that could be expected to cause exceptionally grave damage to national security. Secret is serious damage. Confidential is basically, damage. And there are some other classification markings, like you can't give it to foreigners, or SCI, which means sensitive compartmented information. These are for sort of highly specialized sensitive programs. And then there are special access programs as well. all of this becomes part of what's essentially a glossary to the rest of the indictment. The only thing you really need to know here is that the only way to lawfully access classified information is if you are cleared and you have a need to know. And the indictment says curtly in paragraph 18, after his presidency, Trump was not authorized to possess or retain classified documents. So the document then goes on in the next section to describe the types of documents that he had. Again, we've summarized this earlier, but there are some important details here. It lists the agencies that he had access to material from. Those include the CIA, DOD, the NSA, the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, which handles satellite imagery, the National Reconnaissance Office, which does imaging, the Department of Energy, and the Department of State. So basically, he's got access to everything, which isn't surprising because he's the president. He's also got access to the president's daily brief, of course, which is the only newspaper in the world produced for a single individual, which is the intelligence community's product to brief the president on foreign intelligence every day. And this is it's certainly the most sensitive daily publication in the world. There is then a section, paragraph 22 and 3, which I think, again, very important at trial, in which the document recounts the various statements that Trump made as a candidate, mostly directed at Hillary Clinton because of her handling of emails, about the need to handle classified information properly and enforce the law with respect to it. And then once he had become president, reiterating that. So this is, again, turning the knife in the belly, but also, I think, designed to show that he knows the rules. Do you guys think that it's playing a different role as well? Or is this, just to make clear that he knows exactly what the rules are and that he purports to think they're important?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think a lot of people reading this are going to sort of read it as sort of like turning the knife and like showing the hypocrisy of his previous statements and what about Hillary Clinton's emails type stuff. I really don't read it like that. I think there's a lot of opportunities if the special counsel had wanted to turn that kind of knife, and I think they're playing it very straight, at least from my understanding of this document. What this is really doing is it's showing that Donald Trump was aware that classified information is something that should be protected, and was generally cognizant of the fact that there are rules about handling it, and that violating those rules matters. The point of doing this is to, make the case later at trial that Donald Trump knew about the rules and he decided that they didn't apply to him.
Yeah, I think that's right. But I also do think, though, that, it's not just the showing knowledge. I still think that there is some element to this that is, showing the kind of hypocrisy of it all. Because I think that, this being a speaking indictment and this being something that, the Justice Department attorneys who are writing this, they know that it's not just the legal aspects of the case, but also kind of the story that you're telling to the public and to, people who maybe are on the fence about whether or not this is a politically charged investigation or the kind of things that Trump has put out there about the investigation. And so I think there is an element of kind of more just storytelling here about the hypocrisy. But, it's debatable about whether or not that's appropriate. I don't know. But I do think Matt is right that the main thrust of it is just showing the knowledge.
Yeah, I think Matt is right as to the intent, but it no doubt has the effect that you're describing. I mean, it's you get there and you're kind of like, oh my God, I can't believe he said those things given the way he is alleged to have behaved. But so it's possible that it's not necessarily intended to have that effect, and yet it does. All right. So then we finally get to now the fleshing out of the activity that he is alleged to have engaged in. Paragraph 24 on page 10, Trump and his White House staff, including Nauta, packed items, including some of Trump's boxes. Trump was personally involved in this process. Trump caused his boxes, again, note that caused, containing hundreds of classified documents to be transported from the White House to the Mar-a-Lago Club. Again, the timing of this is unclear, and I think that is intentional. It says the only time reference is in January 2021 as he was preparing to leave the White House. So it is not clear whether this caused predates his ceasing to be president, in which case he has the authority to do it, or postdates it by a minute, like noon 12:05, right? Biden takes the oath of office, the truck leaves, Trump does not have the authority to do this. And I think we're going to learn the answer to that maybe in subsequent indictments, or maybe because there aren't subsequent indictments, at least not in Washington, because the special counsel has determined that however gross this is, it was while he was still president and therefore within his authority. Okay, then here is where the story gets comic. Paragraph 25, I love this paragraph. From January through March 15th, 2021, some of Trump's boxes were stored in the Mar-a-Lago Club's white and gold ballroom, in which events and gatherings took place. Trump's boxes were for a time stacked on the ballroom's stage, as depicted in the photograph below. I have never seen a stack of boxes of classified documents in a ballroom before, and I actually feel bad that I wasn't invited to any of the events in this ballroom, so I might have rifled through them. I can't think of a comparable example to this in, most times when people squirrel away classified information, it's either at their houses or, to give to the Soviets or, to leak to the press. They're not usually displaying it. Can either of you think of an example of like somebody, not necessarily at a ballroom, but, at a museum, at a movie theater, where like somebody takes 80 boxes of classified information and puts them on display?
Not in this sense. I mean, there's the case recently where a National Air Guardsman was posting classified documents on Discord, which is a sort of similarly offensive in its sort of design.
Yeah, I guess that's right. I guess it's sort of like that's the Gen Z version of this, right?
And the only other thing that I can think of is cases not where someone has sort of taken restricted documents and sort of mishandled them, but a case that comes to mind is, for instance, I think it was back in the 80s when the Iranians stormed the US embassy and put together classified documents that had been shredded. But I mean, that's very different in motive, but sort of like similar in the sense of like large numbers of documents being pieced together and sort of. But yeah, there's really nothing that's sort of comparable to this, like having information of this quality and quantity just completely left alone with, no security whatsoever, and it being in a generally public venue. I can't think of a good example.
All right, Anna, what happens next?
Well, there's a little bit of boxes, musical chairs that goes on. So the boxes move from the ballroom to, I believe it's the Business Center in March of 2021. And then after the Business Center, they go to another great place to store classified documents, which is, I believe, a shower.
From the Business Center to the bathroom and shower in the Mar-a-Lago Club's lake room, which is a cool place to store classified material. I just want to focus here on a couple texts that get exchanged, because some for comic reasons and some for substantive reasons. So in April of 2021, Trump employee 2 texts, "Whoa, okay, so POTUS specifically asked Walt for those boxes to be in the Business Center because they are his papers." So note that again, brings into the indictment Trump specifically directing the way these documents are handled. This is not staff level behavior. This is Trump level behavior. When they move to the bathroom, there is an exchange between Trump employee 1 and 2 in which employee 1 writes, "There's a little room in the shower where this other stuff is. Is it only his papers he cares about? There's some other stuff in there that are not papers. Could that go to storage, or does he want everything in there on property?" Notice again, they're talking about what Trump wants. And Trump employee 2 poetically responds, "Yes, anything that's not the beautiful mind paper boxes can definitely go to storage." So I love the phrase beautiful mind paper boxes. That's going to be a meme until the end of time. But again, so notice that Trump is giving directions for how to handle this stuff. And the boxes, the beautiful mind paper boxes, are different from other stuff. Other stuff can go to storage, but the beautiful mind paper boxes have to stay in the shower or stay in the bathroom.
Well, can I just pause here and say that beautiful mind paper boxes, that text from Trump employee 2 is probably my favorite moment in the entire indictment. And I wanted to ask if you guys get the reference there, because I think a lot of people maybe don't.
Well, so I thought it was a reference to the Sylvia Nasser book about Nast. Is that not what it is?
The mathematician, right?
Yeah, the economist.
Yeah, so it's also a film with Russell Crowe, which I think most people maybe have not read the book, but have read or have seen the movie. And there's some incredible scene, because I started watching it last night to kind of see like what a Trump employee 2 was talking about. But there's some incredible scenes in that film where, you know, like Jennifer Connelly's character, who's the wife of the mathematician who's become very obsessive about, you know, his papers and the case that he was working on. And she kind of like walks into various rooms and will find them just like covered in papers, and she will kind of be like, "Oh my God, like, why didn't anyone tell me?" Like, and so it's just a very funny kind of interesting thing to get that reference, because I think a lot of people in the beginning just thought it was a funny turn of phrase, but it's actually a reference to the film or perhaps the book and this kind of, you know, character's obsession with the papers, and so it's just I thought it was an interesting kind of revelation.
Yeah, it's a brilliant book, and very worth everybody's reading for reasons that has nothing to do with Donald Trump. Then in May, Trump directs that the storage room on the ground floor of the Mar-a-Lago Club be cleaned out so that it can be used to store his boxes. And again, there is a passage that is, you know, very clearly intended to highlight how insecure this is. The storage room could be reached from multiple outside entrances, including one accessible from the Mar-a-Lago Club pool patio through a doorway that was often kept open. The storage room was near the liquor supply closet, linen room, lock shop, and various other rooms. So needless to say, Matt, again, not the way we normally store top secret SCI.
Yeah, I think when the FBI raided his place and discovered how these documents were being stored, they were probably quite glad it was next to the liquor supply closet. I'm sure they would have needed it.
All right, so then the stuff is moved from the lake room bathroom to the storage room, and the result is that there are 80 boxes in the storage room. And then we have a spill. Not a spill in the sense that we usually use the term spill with respect to classified information, which refers to an accidental disclosure, but in the literal sense. So what happens next, Matt?
Yeah, so what happens next is we have a couple of photographs in the indictment, and these are from Trump's boxes, which have fallen, stacked in non-structurally sound ways, and some of them have fallen onto the floor. And a consequence of this is that their contents have spilled onto the floor, and showing some of the documents that are inside, including one that is marked Secret Rel to USA FVEY, which means that it's a document classified as secret, and it's information that's related to the US and the Five Eyes community, which is the United States, United Kingdom, Canada, New Zealand, and Australia, the Five Eyes Alliance. And Nauta then texts one of his friends, another Trump employee, says, "I opened the door and found this," and attaches the two photographs that we see above. And Trump employee 2 replies, oh no, and "I'm sorry, POTUS had my phone."
Yeah, so I think this is an extremely important moment, and it's worth breaking down. So the text reads, Nauta also attached 2 photographs he took of the spill. Trump employee 2 replied, oh no, and "I'm sorry, POTUS had my phone." So I think what they are saying there, and what Trump employee 2 will testify to, is that it was not Trump employee 2 who said, oh no, but Trump who said, oh no. And then Trump employee 2 says, I'm sorry, POTUS had my phone. And so what you see there is not a texting images of classified material on an open network, by the way, in a fashion that Trump personally saw. And the text then reads, one of the photographs Nauta texted to Trump employee 2 is depicted below with the visible classified information redacted. In other words, so Trump saw a literal spillage of classified material visible with, texted over a non-secure line, and responded, oh no. Do you read it differently that this is saying Trump saw this?
I think that's right. And that's how I read it. And I was trying to think about, what another interpretation would be. Potentially that the employee, what we don't know is the timestamps here, right? So we don't know when Nauta texted Trump employee 2 with these photos, and then Trump employee 2 replied, oh no, POTUS had my phone. It's possible that there was some kind of long gap between, the response after Nauta sent the photo. So I guess the other way you could interpret it is just that the employee is saying like, oh, sorry, I'm just responding because POTUS had my phone. But I don't think that the Justice Department would put that message in here if there was not some, testimony to the fact that it's not that was going on, right? Because I think that it's that first interpretation of, that Trump responded, oh no, on the employee's phone.
Yeah, I don't think it would be important to say POTUS had my phone in the indictment unless the implication were that Trump himself had written the oh no.
Right.
I think that's right. It is worth remembering, of course, that this indictment indicts Donald Trump, but it does also indict Walt Nauta, and this paragraph is primarily about Nauta. And I think one of the very important things that this paragraph is doing is, as well as showing that Donald Trump knew indirectly about all the classified information being stored there, that Nauta did too. That's super important because the special counsel's office is wanting to indict Walt, to levy a series of very serious charges against him, almost certainly with the intent that they will later drop all or most of those charges in exchange for Walt's testimony against Donald Trump later at trial. But that does mean that it's also very important that they show that these charges apply to him too.
Right, but if you were merely interested in his conduct here, you wouldn't need to include Trump Employees 2's response.
Oh, yes. So I think this paragraph is doing both things, right? I think that it's primarily talking about Nauta and saying that these charges apply to him. He certainly knew that there was documents that were classified information that he should not have been storing, but he certainly knew of it. Like, the photographs make that very clear. But secondly, the president, the former president at the time, was also very well aware of what was going on in his establishment and that these documents were being mishandled.
So we come now to the two disclosures of the classified material in private meetings. Anna, walk us through what happens beginning at the bottom of page 14.
Right. So we get to a more detailed account of what happens at these meetings in New Jersey where Trump shows classified information. And I would note that in paragraph 32, we once again get that language of Trump caused some of his boxes to be moved to New Jersey from the Mar-a-Lago club. And then it moves into, in paragraph 33, an explanation of kind of what happened with this writer and publisher and two members of Trump's staff at the golf club in New Jersey when in this kind of recorded conversation, Trump seems a little bit, upset that a senior military official who I believe that we know from news reports is likely the chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff, Mark Milley. And Trump, talks about how this senior military official had been making statements that he tried to dissuade Trump from attacking country A.
Which we know to be Iran.
Yes, which we know to be Iran. And so Trump is trying to, I believe, say, well, I was presented with a plan of attack from senior military officials. And so he's trying to kind of, say that Mark Milley's narrative is not, accurate and that he's kind of, being wrongly maligned. But and so in doing so, he, seems to be showing a document with this plan of attack. And Ben, I don't know, maybe you want to go through some of the language here that is really interesting because we have a partial transcript of what occurs.
Right. So there is a transcript where he's talking, to be clear, to the would-be ghostwriter and publisher of Mark Meadows's autobiography. And I think there's the substantive content where he says, this would kind of destroy Milley's argument. But then the bottom is really the heart of it. He says that he's got a problem because this is secret. This is secret information. Look at this. And then he says, this was done by the military and given to me. I think we can probably, right, declassify it. See, as president, I could have declassified it. Now I can't, but it's still a secret. Isn't that? And the staffer says, now we have a problem. And Trump says, isn't that interesting? So he's, it contains not just as Matt said earlier, the recognition that the material is still classified at the secret level, the recognition that he could have declassified it, but he no longer has the authority, and he's talking about it and showing it to them anyway. And so it's a short passage that is just devastating. Okay, so what do we know about the second episode?
So, and the second episode, we, again get information that Trump showed a representative from his political action committee a classified map of country B, which I believe that is...
That's Afghanistan.
Yes. So he shows a map of country B and tells the PAC representative that he should not be showing that map and not to get too close. We don't have much more here, and that likely is because there maybe isn't a recording, but perhaps that the PAC representative testified to this effect. So is that what everyone else understands, why we don't have, kind of the transcript that we do in the other incident?
I think that's right. It's not recorded, so it's going to rely on the PAC representative's testimony. But again, it does say very clearly that he acknowledges, he says to the PAC representative that he should not be showing him the map. And the PAC representative is instructed not to get too close. So it shows sort of cognizance of improper conduct. And again, neither of these incidents is specifically charged. It will be interesting to see whether they are charged later. They're here because they show consciousness of guilt in all sorts of ways that are relevant to what comes next and what came before.
And Ben, I will ask you while we're here on the New Jersey conduct, because I think that this is a question that a lot of people have been asking since reading this indictment. As far as we are aware, Trump's golf club in New Jersey where these events occurred has not been searched. Is that right?
Correct. And as far as I know of no grand jury activity in New Jersey. So it could be that they've just decided to let this ride. It could be that they have quietly recovered the material from Bedminster. I think there was an additional turnover of material. It could be that there is activity that we're all unaware of. But I think there's some story that we don't know the end of involving Bedminster.
So two things. First of all, it's not necessarily the PAC representative who will be the witness testimony, right? All that they do need in the trial is they do need a witness who has sort of a first-hand knowledge of the matter, right? So it could have been someone else that was there whilst the PAC representative was being shown this information. So it could be a different member of staff. It could also potentially be Walt himself. So it could be a couple of other things.
No, it couldn't be Walt.
Oh yeah, that's right. It couldn't be Walt because they would have had to say it. But it could be a different member of staff.
Yes.
And the other thing that I just wanted to point out for folks that are not used to reading indictments, indictments as a general rule omit naming countries, businesses, and individuals that are not charged in the document. So when it here mentions, senior military official that we know is Mark Milley, country A, which we know is Iran, and country B, which is Afghanistan, that's not necessarily because the Office of Special Counsel thinks that this is, unusually sensitive or classified or anything else. This is, very often they will use redactions in ways that they know everybody is going to immediately work out. It's just the style of indictments is that they will exclude that information unless they have to.
Yes, and they're very consistent about it. And if you remember in the indictment of Michael Cohen, that is why President at the time Trump was called Individual One.
Yes.
Even though it was
glaringly obvious
who they were dealing with.
It was Individual One who at the time was
was president of the United States, right?
Or a candidate, I think, but yes.
Yes. All right. So now we come back to the part of the story that people know or that was previously known, May of 2001, NARA demands that Trump turn over records that he had previously kept.
But before we get to that, I think you might have missed paragraph 36, which I think has an important thing in it. Again, stating that Trump said at a press conference before, in 2017, whilst he was president, complaining about classified information getting to the press and saying, the first thing I thought of when I heard about it is, how does the press get this information that's classified? How do they do it? How do they know why? And then there's a very important sentence here, because it is an illegal process and the press should be ashamed of themselves, right? But more importantly, the people that gave out the information to the press should be ashamed of themselves, really ashamed. So what we have here again is an example of Donald Trump saying something on record where he is aware that giving classified information to the press, which he's just done a couple of paragraphs earlier, giving classified information to the press is something that he knows is an illegal process.
Yeah, that's a super important passage. National Archives demands the stuff back, and paragraph 38 reads, between November 2021 and January 2022, NADA and Trump employee 2, at Trump's direction, again, focusing on his individual supervision, brought boxes from the storage room to Trump's residence for Trump to review. So this is now we're getting into the heart of the criminality that's actually charged in this indictment. NARA is demanding the material back, and the material is migrating from the storage room to Trump's residence for his personal review. There are a series of paragraphs where this becomes vivid. In November of 2021, Trump employee 2 provides Trump a photograph of the boxes in the storage room by way of showing him how many there are, by taping it to one of the boxes that he had placed in Trump's residence. He provides Trump the photograph, the indictment says, so that Trump could see how many of the boxes there are in the storage room. And there's a photograph of these sort of lines of boxes. And then there are a series of paragraphs. These are critically important that are designed to show that Trump individually goes through the boxes. NADA sends to Trump employee 2 this photograph. They discuss specifically Trump's review of the contents of the boxes. NADA is delivering boxes back and forth. They are actively talking about him going through the boxes. At one point, NADA replies in text messages, he has one he's working on in Pine Hall, knocked out 2 boxes yesterday. And there are these repeated texts, it's several paragraphs about, boxes going up and back so that Trump can go through them. There is no direct evidence that Trump did go through them, of course, because only that would presumably be done by Trump in private. But there's evidence of the movement of boxes back and forth. All of this is while they are trying to get back to the National Archive and answer how much classified materials they have. The National Archive is trying to pin them down about the volume, and Trump is going through these boxes and presumably removing material that he doesn't want to return. So January of 2022, they gather 15 boxes, and which presumably Trump has been through now, and return those to the National Archive. Anna, NADA does not tell the truth about this interaction when he's interviewed by the FBI in May. What happens?
Right. So they outline a number of the false statements that NADA makes with respect to the production to NARA. They say that he falsely stated that he was not aware that Trump's boxes were being brought to his residence for review. So that's kind of one reason why, they were very focused on showing these, text messages or communications that show that Nauta was very involved in, bringing these boxes to Trump for a review. He also falsely stated that he didn't know that he and Trump employee 2 brought from Trump's residence to the commercial truck for delivery to NARA on January 17th, 2022. And then he also says, when asked whether he knew where Trump's boxes had been stored before they were in Trump's residence, he says, "I wish I could tell you. I don't know. I honestly just don't know." But clearly from all of the preceding events, it's made clear that Nauta did know where the boxes had been stored before they were in Trump's residence. So those three things form the basis for the false statements in count 38 of the indictment.
Right. And then so they do actually give back some classified material. In those 15 boxes, 14 of them contain classification markings, 197 documents to be precise, 98 secret, 30 top secret, and the rest confidential. And there are SCI and SAP markings on some of them. So they actually do return some super sensitive stuff, but only after Trump has kind of plucked out the stuff that he wants to keep. All right, so then the FBI opens the criminal investigation following NARA's referral. The grand jury convenes in April, and in May it issues a subpoena demanding the rest of it back. And here is where really the heart of the criminality lies. Trump is informed of the subpoena. Shortly thereafter, Nauta enters the storage room on May 22nd and leaves with one of Trump's boxes. And the next day, Trump meets with 2 attorneys, 1 and 2, and he tells them, "I don't want anybody looking. I don't want anybody going through my boxes. I really don't. I don't want you looking through my boxes. What if we just don't respond at all or don't play ball with them? Wouldn't it be better if we just told them we didn't have anything here? Isn't there better if there are no documents?" So they need to do a search to comply with the subpoena, and Trump is suggesting ways to obstruct. These are incredibly damaging statements. We know attorney 1 is Evan Corcoran, and we think attorney 2 is, I'm forgetting her name.
Jennifer Little.
Jennifer Little. And they clearly have heard testimony from both of them. And so having your lawyers testify that you suggested that, we just lie and say there aren't any documents, that is extremely damaging allegations.
Yeah, I mean, it's super important that these are Trump's attorneys, because ordinarily, when you're discussing things with your attorneys, that's going to be covered by attorney-client privilege. And here, the criminality was so extreme that was breached, right?
Right.
The FBI was able to get access to these documents that otherwise would have been covered by client-attorney privilege.
Right. And I wonder, Ben and Matt, what do we know about how Jack Smith, knew about going after these kinds of statements within the attorney-client communications? Do we know anything about that? And I mean, I know that the motion is obviously still sealed. So the
entire litigation is sealed.
Yeah.
We don't know what information they had that allowed them to breach the privilege.
Right.
We do know that they were very upset at a certification by one of Trump's attorneys that they had gone through all of the documents that the FBI said was false. Right.
Right.
So it could have come out of that investigation.
And we do know that in terms of what resulted from the piercing of attorney-client privilege is that Jack Smith investigators got a recording or a set of voice memos that Evan Corcoran made about his conversations.
As well as all his notes. But that was the fruits of the piercing of the privilege, not the cause of it.
Yes.
In this conversation with the two lawyers, Trump praises Hillary Clinton's lawyers for smashing her computers, which leave aside whether.
Never mind.
leave aside the truth of it is illustrative of what he wanted them to do. The indictment says he related the story more than once that day.
That sentence right there, like you have your favorite parts of the indictment. That sentence is my favorite part of the entire indictment because you can just tell how tired they were writing that sentence.
Right. So he finally confirms with Corcoran that Corcoran would come back on June 2nd to do the search. And this sets up that he's actually willing to delay his trip to Bedminster to supervise this. So again, personal responsibility. This happens on May 23rd. He delays his departure to Bedminster. And what follows is a series of removals of material by Nauta from that storage room. On May 24th, he takes out 3 boxes. On the 30th, he speaks by phone with Trump for 30 seconds, and then he removes 50 boxes from the storage room. On May 30th, later in the day, a Trump family member tweets or texts him about these boxes that he has moved up to the residence and to say, hey, we're not going to have room to take them with us to Bedminster. And he responds, good afternoon, ma'am, smiley face emoji. Thank you so much. I think he just wants to pick from them. I don't imagine him wanting to take the boxes. He told me to put them in the room and that he was going to talk to you about them. So again, these boxes are coming up there, and Nauta at least thinks Trump is picking things out of them. He then removes on June 1st another 11 boxes from the storage room. So the key paragraph here is paragraph 62. Between May 23rd and June 2nd, before Trump Attorney 1's review of the boxes in the storage room, Nauta, at Trump's direction, moved approximately 64 boxes from the storage room to Trump's residence and brought to the storage room only approximately 30 boxes. Neither Trump nor Nauta informed Trump Attorney 1 of this information. So in other words, there's a net movement of material, 30 boxes of material out of the storage room and into the residence in a fashion that is unaccounted for.
Something that is kind of, implicit here in terms of the source of the evidence between paragraphs like maybe 58 to 59 and within the next couple of pages where they're specifically pointing out like very specific time periods within which Nauta moved these boxes. And so I think that maybe what that's telling us is that this is the surveillance video that they have. We do know that they have some surveillance video of moving around of boxes. And so I think that that's important. And then also, the fact that they have these communications between Trump and Nauta that are very, very shortly before the moving of the boxes. And so, that shows the connection between, Trump's directions and then the moving of the boxes.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think also one of the very important things about several of these paragraphs is that they're essentially saying that Trump and Nauta were misleading Trump attorney number one, right? That is very important. The conclusion of this entire section is that Trump attorney one was materially misled as to what was going on with all of this. So when Trump attorney number one gives his misleading certification over to the FBI and to the special counsel's office, or the Department of Justice, I guess it was at the time, when he gives that misleading certification, he was doing so because of a corrupt scheme that was being directed by Trump and which Nauta was part of, and they were directing this entire enterprise to mislead the FBI.
Yes, and attorney number one is sufficiently suspicious of it that he doesn't even do the certification himself. He has attorney number three do it, who's not even involved in the search. June 2nd, attorney one, Evan Corcoran, comes to Mar-a-Lago to look for the documents. He meets with Trump. Nauta escorts him to the storage room, which has been cleaned of the material unbeknownst to Corcoran. He then reviews the material. He locates 38 documents with classified markings. He places them in a folder, seals them with duct tape, which is the traditional way of handling classified material, not. And then he has an astonishing conversation with Trump. Trump says to him, "Did you find anything? Is it bad? Good?" And then it reads as follows. Trump and attorney number one then discussed what to do with the folder containing documents with classification markings and whether Trump attorney one should bring them to his hotel room and put them in a safe there. During that conversation, Trump made a plucking motion as memorialized by Trump attorney one. He made a funny motion as though, well, okay, why don't you take them with you to your hotel room? And if there's anything really bad in there, like pluck it out. And that was the motion that he made. He didn't say that. So Corcoran does not pluck them out. He calls the Department of Justice and asks to meet with an FBI agent to turn them over. And that evening, he gets in touch with attorney number three, which is Christina Bobb, who's the real patsy here, and asks her if she would come to Mar-a-Lago to be the custodian of the records and sign the certification that the search had been adequate. She does so, even though she had nothing to do with the search in question and had not reviewed the subpoena. And she falsely states that a diligent search had been conducted, that it was conducted in order to locate documents responsive to the subpoena. And this is the key phrase, any and all responsive documents accompany this certification, which of course is not true. And Trump knew not to be true because he had personally removed documents that were responsive. Following this, the family and Nauta pack up and go to Mar-a-Lago, go to Bedminster, and carrying these items with them. The FBI gets wind of this. It's not clear how. It simply says in July 2022, the FBI and grand jury obtained and reviewed surveillance video from the Mar-a-Lago club showing the movement of boxes set forth above, and they conduct the search warrant. During this, they seize 102 documents with classification markings in Trump's office and the storage room. 17 are top secret, 54 are secret, and 31 are confidential. And that is the story, but we have 38 charges that result from them. We will breeze through them relatively quickly, except for the first 31, about which Matt has done a fair bit of research or sleuthing. The first 31 charges each relate to the retention of a document that was classified or designated as national defense information. So, Matt, you have spent some time writing for your Substack and for Lawfare a sleuthing exercise in what we can figure out about these documents. Give us a brief overview.
Right. So right from the very start, I think it's important to notice that these 31 charges are one charge each for a very particular document in each case. So far as I can understand it, that enables the special counsel in this case to sort of take each one of them separately, because they're doing slightly different things in some of these cases. In the indictment itself, it's actually quite opaque what some of these documents are. They list for every single one of the documents, they list three things. The first thing is a date range, which they say is the period of time where the document was held by Donald Trump and his associates. And that's the period of time in which the charge sort of applies. The second thing is for documents that have a classification marking, what the classification marking on that document is. And the third thing is a very, very brief description of what the document is. So like document dated May the 3rd, 2018, concerning White House intelligence briefing related to various foreign countries. And in each one of these cases, it's very, very brief. If we look at charge number 5 here, for instance, we have a document which is top secret. The compartments are redacted. It's also ORCON, which means that it's originator controlled. So the originating agency that produced this document has to be asked before this document is further revealed, and it's no form, which means that it's relating only to American information and shouldn't be shared with foreign countries. And this is a document dated June 2020 concerning nuclear capabilities of a foreign country, right? And they don't tell you which foreign country, they don't tell you what else is in that document. But with several of these documents, you can actually look at some of the dates and some of the classifications that are going on here, and you can make some informed guesses as to what else was going on at the time. So if we look at that one in particular, for instance, document number 5, this is a top secret document concerning nuclear capabilities of a foreign country dated June 2020. June 2020 is super interesting if you pay way more attention to these things than is healthy, because in June 2020, one nuclear power did something very interesting, which is the Russian Federation decided that they were going to publicize their nuclear deterrence doctrine. Right? They didn't actually change it, but they declassified it. They wrote it down and published it. So it's available on the internet if you would like to go away and look at it. And that's super interesting because this happens in June 2020. And when Russia changes or does anything that touches on its nuclear deterrence doctrine, that's going to end up in a presidential daily brief, right? We don't know what happens exactly in presidential daily briefs, but we can say with a lot of confidence, if the Russian Federation changes its nuclear deterrence doctrine, that's going to be in a presidential daily brief. And when will it be in a presidential daily brief? In June 2020, because that's when it happened. Right. So although the indictment doesn't tell us this document is about a document concerning the nuclear capabilities of Russia, it almost certainly is. Right. And you can also see here that there's some extreme sensitivity going on with this document. It's top secret and it involves special access programs, but the special access programs themselves are sufficiently classified that they're not going to even tell us what they are. They're redacted. Right. So that's one example of a document that we can extract extra information from. Another one that I think is worth drawing attention to is document number 19. Right. This is a super interesting document because its classification is secret / formally redacted data. That's formally as in the past. And this is an undated document concerning nuclear weaponry of the United States. This is a super, super interesting document because it's the only one of these documents that doesn't fit into the ordinary mechanism that we use in the national security community for classifying documents. For the vast majority of classified documents held by the US government. They fit into the ordinary national security categories of, confidential, secret, top secret, and special access programs, right, with, additional caveats. Documents that relate to classified secrets around nuclear weapons, the production of fuel for nuclear weapons and for, reactor design and so on. These are in fact classified in a completely different way. They're classified thanks to the Atomic Energy Act. And the Atomic Energy Act provides for two key classification structures, which is restricted data and formally restricted data. It's very easy if you're not sort of aware of how the system works. Formally restricted data doesn't mean that it's no longer classified under the system. It means that it used to be restricted data, and it covers specific categories of information to do with nuclear weapons. And these are all nuclear weapons held by the United States. So in this particular case, formally restricted data relates to, for example, US stockpile quantities, like how many nuclear weapons the US has, nuclear weapons safety, storage, what the yields of nuclear weapons are held by the United States, and locations of nuclear weapons. But probably not things like reactor design or the nuclear weapon design itself. I think this is actually a really interesting inclusion, not just because of the sensitivity of it and the emotional weight. I think the vast majority of everyone in America hearing that Donald Trump had information relating to the nuclear weapon design system, to the nuclear weapons of the United States, will sort of immediately understand that that's obviously correctly classified information. But because it's classified under the Atomic Energy Act rather than through the executive orders,
it can't have been declassified by Trump.
Right. So it's not Executive Order 13526 derived. It's Atomic Energy Act derived information. And the mechanism for declassification in there is completely different, right? It is laid out by statute. Information is restricted data or formally restricted data within the meaning of the Atomic Energy Act in the event that the Department of Energy, or the Secretary for the Department of Energy and the Secretary for the Defense, for the Department of Defense, agree that this information is covered by one of the categories in the Atomic Energy Act. In the event that they disagree, the president is the tiebreaker, right? So the president could, choose, if you wanted a pathological example, the president could direct the Secretary of Energy and the Secretary of Defense to remove a designation on some documents and fire them and go through a Saturday night massacre of people until he can get to either one of them agreeing that this is not classified and then breaking the tie and saying this is not classified data anymore. But the really important thing here is that process is assured, right? It's definitely going to have to take place. There is no possibility that this document could have been declassified by the president without going through this process. So this idea that the president could have just picked a process out of thin air, or he could have just declared it to be declassified, or he could have declassified it in his mind or whatever, that certainly could not have applied to this particular document. And that's unique amongst all of the other documents that are here, that this is a document that's related to US nuclear secrets and is therefore not something that the president could have easily or unilaterally declassified.
So, Anna, I'm going to ask you to just run through the other charges very briefly, just the briefest of summaries. We've done the facts already, and we've done the statutes, so we can be very brief about it.
So after we get through the Espionage Act counts, we kind of get to a separate part of the counts that go to obstruction or conspiracy to obstruct. Count 32 charges Trump and Nauta with conspiracy to obstruct justice. Count 33 charges Trump and Nauta with withholding documents from the grand jury subpoena. Count 34 charges Trump and Nauta with withholding documents from Evan Corcoran which caused him to submit the false subpoena response. Count 35 relates to Trump and Nauta withholding the documents from the FBI investigation and the grand jury investigation. Count 36 charges both Trump and Nauta with scheming to conceal things from the FBI and grand jury investigation. Count 37 charges Trump alone, and it relates to causing Christina Bobb to make a false statement to the FBI in her certification. And then finally, count 38 is a charge that only applies to Nauta, and it is related to conduct for making false claims in his statements to the FBI. And I believe that is a kind of quick and dirty summary of not necessarily the statutes, but just kind of what all of those counts relate to.
Right. So that is actually the indictment right there. There is a lot more to say about it, which we will get to in due course. You can learn more about a lot of the individual indictments over at either Lawfare, where Matt has published his sleuthing on the subject, or at his Substack, Pwn All the Things. Anna will be down in Miami at the initial hearing on Tuesday. So there's going to be a lot more on this. And of course, we will be following it carefully on Lawfare. But that is the indictment. Matt, Anna, thank you both so much for joining us on Read With Me.
Cool.
Thanks for having us, Ben.
Thanks.
The Lawfare podcast is produced in cooperation with the Brookings Institution. Our audio engineer this episode was me, which is why the sound is not wonderful, and I apologize for that. You should become a material supporter of Lawfare at patreon.com/Lawfare. And if you want to, you can subscribe to Dogshirt Daily at, dogshirtdaily.com. The Lawfare podcast is edited by Jen Patja Howell. Our music is performed by Sophia Yan. And as always, thanks for listening.